68th day of August in the year of 2022. I'm Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the nuclearproctologist.org. And we run a program where we identify universities and medias and corporations propaganda about nuclear. And the problem is that every single story in a 24-hour news cycle is going to have multiple propaganda in it, but just lies. And the problem with that is it's a lot of work for someone like me because there's nobody else that does this. And it's just bizarre that every single story the media has to lie in order to convince you that nuclear has some redeeming qualities. It's quite shocking, really. Do anybody remember 37 years ago the Move On organization in Philadelphia were bombed by police in a helicopter? They dropped bombs down on random roofs, and because they knew some of the Move On was in that area, and it killed a bunch of people, including children. The two children's bodies were returned to the family today or yesterday. They kept the two children's bodies for 37 years. Now, in that period, they gave some of the children's bodies to the University of Philadelphia to do experiments on it. And that it was just gobblish media reporting on it. And I think it's the extreme of what the media and industry and governments and universities are willing to do. I can't believe the universities didn't say, come on, this is children's bodies. They had nothing to do with it. Instead of giving it to us to do experiments on, shouldn't we ship or give them back to their loved ones so they can have closure? Why did they keep the bodies for 37 years? This is a problem, right? That the government agencies, the universities, the medias are so out of touch that they don't see anything wrong with that. Listen, this could be your loved ones, okay? Just as easily as these people. If you let them get away with that, then it will be your loved ones next time. It's frightening, and the media tells the story as if it has no value whatsoever. The remains of two children killed when the city bombed the Move compound, which was townhouses. There's lots of innocent people, obviously. Have finally been cremated. So they kept the bodies. The bodies are now, you can imagine the condition they're in 37 years later. And the family, bless their hearts, said, look, we just want closure. This is what we're up against as a society. It's just a shocking story. Okay, so there's another shocking and terrifying story about how the local governments and cities are out of touch with any concept of reality. And it's not that either. It's just that they're evil. That's why this stuff happens, is because those people that done that are just evil people. So across my school in Canada is the BWXT Nuclear Energy Canada. They're conducting soil testing. Assembly dissembles fuel bundles for reactors. Now, the toxicity we're talking about is shocking, by the way, because far exceeds industrial poison. They're collecting soil samples looking for beryllium and uranium, which is concentrated because it's in a fuel rod. This is highly concentrated stuff. It hasn't yet been irradiated, but it's concentrated. And so they're also going to take soil samples from the Prince of Wales public school that happens to be across the street from a nuclear fuel facility. The school was there first, by the way. It doesn't even seem possible that government agencies can be that disconnected. But, I mean, they kept children's bodies for 37 years that had nothing to do with a movement and gave some of the body parts to universities that willingly took it. It's not broken. It was never operational. The whole system is just... there's no word that sums it up appropriately. It needs its own word. It's that cruel, what we're talking about. The BWXT facility, which makes the fuel rods for Canada's nuclear reactors, they're doing what they call routine soil sampling for uranium at the Prince of Wales Public School, which is across its facility. I can't wrap my mind around that. I can't wrap my mind around why there's a school across from a nuclear fuel rod facility in Canada, which is supposed to be one of the best places on the planet to live. I can't wrap my mind around this. They say uranium is a naturally occurring, weakly radioactive element which is present at low levels in the environment. Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an enriched uranium concentrate at a facility across the street from a high school. And their statement they're using there is naturally in soil, rocks, and water and air, which is true. But we're already acclimated to that kind of radiation. That's not concentrated radiation. Or uranium, whatever you want to call it. The difference is night and day in this stuff, according to the company. So rather than look up independent facts, they just asked the company. That's really something, isn't it? Oh, people call in at 709-589-4406. Because uranium is a naturally occurring low-level radioactive material, but the stuff that goes in the fuel rods is not a naturally occurring low-level radioactive material. The concentrates don't exist virtually everywhere. And it doesn't contribute to what the company calls natural background radiation. Look, if I got concentrated radiation and anybody finds out about it, I'm getting arrested. They're going to do documentaries and call me a terrorist, right? There's many examples of it if you want to look it up yourselves. At the Prince of Wales Public School across from its facility. Now, they said the stuff that I just showed you where they claim it's natural, it's everywhere, it's like walking in sunshine, getting on an airplane, sleeping next to somebody, bizarre fable. To protect the company, not the children. Did you hear me? It's to protect the company, not the children. It's like eating a banana, walking in sunshine, flying on an airplane. Assemblies for fuel bundles. You don't put bananas and potato chips in reactor cores. And using natural, like I've never actually heard him say that before when it comes to the fuel itself, call it natural. And we do this 5 days a week, year after year after year after year. We cover the 24-hour news cycle. I've never ever heard it said that way. And if you got caught with concentrated uranium, it's a crime in every country on the entire planet. Because uranium is naturally occurring low-level materials that exist virtually everywhere, but not concentrated. And in order to get this kind of concentration, which is for fuel rods, the amount of chemicals and the chemicals you're going to use are illegal to extract it from tons and tons and tons and tons of rocks. You need incredible operation to do it, right? The claim that it's naturally occurring is on itself. The school was there first, Stephen Young, as far as I know. Hi, Stephen. Research has demonstrated the addition of 5% beryllium oxide will extend the life of the fuel rod by as much as 25%, which is what Canada uses for the Candu reactors. So the beryllium oxide, they're going to try to play that as natural too. So it's just lightweight, strong metal found in the Earth's crust and can be found in everything from cell phones, airbags, sensors to aircrafts and pacemakers, according to the release from the company. This is a Channel Star, by the way. It's a major media. But you're not going to find, it's true to use it in those scenarios, but not concentrated. And not a 5% concentrate on top of that. We're talking about a huge amount when you're talking about these numbers. Then they claim it's used in small amounts. It's 5% of the fuel. To join components of the fuel bundles together, the release states. Again, this is an illegal concentration. You have to have a special facility with special permits, and it's very difficult to find in these concentrations. I can't believe that they're claiming that the uranium is natural, therefore it's okay. It's absurd. Which brings us back to the question of, should the nuclear industry hire smart people and fire the millions of scumbags? And we got 25 votes, 92%, and a couple of scumbags voted no. Yeah, Galen Windsor was a buffoon who regurgitated the nuclear industry's narrative to perfection, and then they used him to do presentations in the community. One of his favorite sayings was, you can eat grams of plutonium, it can't hurt you, it's like eating salt. He's a Rod Adam, but not quite as sophisticated, right? He's a perpetual lawyer. And we cover each week we cover hundreds of these professional lawyers. He's just one that people seem to gravitate to for some reason. I've actually had people ask me about Galen Windsor, and I was like, What do you mean? If you actually go listen to him, you realize he's just a nuclear useful idiot, right? Can't wrap my mind around that story anyway. It's a Canadian story. I apologize for all Canadians on behalf of all Canadians that our nuclear industry is probably the most evil nuclear industry on the entire planet. It's also known that beryllium is known to cause a form of pneumonia that often leads to lung cancer and respiratory illnesses. They had a major release here where they quarantined an Ontario lab, which is the same laboratory would have been supplying it for the Candu reactors, no doubt. Still trying to determine how many employees were in the area at the time of the exposures, instead of investigative, because the police can't investigate them. See, it's not illegal to poison you with radiation. Anyway, there's all kinds of studies on this. Chronic beryllium disease is a brutal illness from coming in. But you can't get that unless you're in the industry, right? And you're exposed to a huge amount of it. So I was looking at it, trying to figure it out. And I did, of course. Yeah, they call it a natural occurring lightweight material, but it's not a naturally occurring. It's not naturally occurring in bulk. Chinese chicken, how you like your chicken?
Hey, it's James. Yeah, I just wanted to...
Hi, James. Hang on.
Share something.
I was just trying to be funny, which is actually ridiculous because I'm not actually funny. So, hello, James. Lucid, folks, on the phone. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I just want to be real quick. Something that happened today. I got the new shirt, the Fukushima Meltdowns and Extinction Level Event. Actually, it says Extinction Level Event, so it's like a grammatical error. But so what, right? Who cares?
I smurfed it up.
But I wear. It's not. It's like this is the funny thing about it, though, right? It's a great shirt because the starfish is really bright. You know, and I walked into the grocery store today. It must have been 1 million people in there. And I'm just walking, you know, I'm smiling at people, you know, I'm just trying to get noticed in a sense. Like I'm just trying to telepathically, like, hey, look at this, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Even get to the checkout line, and there's people behind me, you know, and I'm thinking,
somebody's going to notice it. Yeah.
Someone's got to notice, right? Nobody. None of them. It was the strangest thing. It's like, they had to have seen the shirt, you know? Like, there was no response from anybody. I mean, no weird looks, nothing, you know, just, I mean, I don't know how to explain it. It's just the strangest thing to me that, how more in the open can you be? You're wearing this bright star. I mean, how many people do you see wear a starfish on their shirt?
Yeah, no kidding.
That's something you would notice, right?
Yeah. And nothing.
And they see Fukushima. They see the word. They don't. It's like no one can process what's going on. It's so eerie. It's like you being out in the ocean. There's no cobwebs on the island. Get up there, it's just silent. It's like being on the moon, you said before.
It is. That's right, though. Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that. I don't know how to process it, but I love the shirt, though. It's great.
What was the error on it again?
Oh, it just says extinction level event. I guess it should be AN, like AN, extinction level event. Is that the correct grammar? I don't know if anyone checked.
No, my grammar's terrible. It's terrible.
But who cares? Like, gives a
It's a good. They're good shirts, though. Okay.
No one,
They're comfortable.
oh yeah, no, it's great.
What color did you get, James?
Oh, this is. What's that?
What color did you get?
It's gray. The gray one.
It shows up good on
like
that?
A light gray. Yeah, it's great. It's nice. It's really nice. It's really great value. It's like I have another one, and I think I wore it too many times or went through the dryer too many times, and I kind of faded. Starfish was the early one I got.
Oh, is that right? Oh, that's too bad.
But it's all good. It's like just buy more shirts, right?
Yeah. That's probably what they're up to.
Yeah.
Okay, was there anything else you want to throw out there, James? Thank you, by the way.
That's all. If I want to share. But thanks so much, Dana.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was awesome. It was the first time anybody said anything, so thank you, James.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, you too, man. My grammar. Sometimes I'm not really paying attention, right? And I got to learn. I got to look at all my shirts now. Make sure I don't do that too many times. I will. There's no way for me to avoid it. And so you'll find the T-shirts probably under my video or something like that. It was a lot of work to actually get my merchandise to show up under my video. There was a bit of a nightmare trying to make it work, but it works now, and so I don't know if I've done it tonight. I don't think I've done it tonight, so I'll do it after. Again, I was looking at the beryllium, and we'll just move on past that. Lung transplants may be an option for severe cases. That's not from natural, that's from the concentrates, right? But the media was trying to convince you that it's natural, but it's not. And as you know with me, I got a tendency to go overboard with it. Natural uranium dioxide. Come on, Dana, move past the story already. Yeah, there we go, next story. Well, it's good to hear that the shirts are nice. It's sad to hear the shirts fade, and nothing surprises me, unfortunately, when it comes to this industry. So back to the poll. Should the nuclear industry hire smart people and fire the millions of stupid people? I can see a couple of stupid people showed up and said no. My apologies. I was thirsty. I was drinking water. And I was thinking I should click over even though I'm drinking water, because otherwise people are going to be hearing these sounds in the microphone. Shelling hits power lines at Ukraine's nuclear plant. And both sides trade blame. So do you think Russia's shells went out of their gun and then fell down? Or do you think Ukraine was shooting at the plant? Now, if you knock out the power, you can melt down these reactors, because the generator is dependent upon external power. And the reactors, by the way, are dependent upon external power to run. Nuclear plants can't run on their own energy. We did have a troll in the comments last week, at the first Sunday of last Sunday, I think it was, and they were claiming that they were obviously pro-nuke when you read their comments after. They were claiming that the power goes out and comes back into the plant. It's not. All nuclear power plants have two external power plants, gas, oil, and coal plants that provide 24 hours a day, 7 days a week energy to build it, to run it, and also for 60 years to decommission the power plants. So get rid of the nuclear, you got two power plants. That's the same amount of power as the power plant is going to produce. The nuclear power plants, they release the fuel pools, are still splitting the atoms. And most nuclear power plants are also surrounded by farms. And what that means is they're poisoning you worldwide. There's over 1,000 fuel pools worldwide. Instead of powering millions of homes, they're still splitting the atoms, and the atoms with no containment are released into the environment. Shelling hits a high voltage power line. The high voltage power line is running those little cities we call nuclear power plants. This is like the worst case scenario, by the way. And worse than that is it melts down. So they disconnect one reactor, which meant they had to shut it off. You can't just shut a reactor down. Well, you theoretically you're inserting the control rods to take away some of the chain reaction, but you can't stop it. Despite no radioactive leak being detected, you can't quantify these assertions that quick. These are huge facilities. Ukrainian artillery fire has cut the lines at the plant. That's the Financial Post. Ukraine is saying Russia done it. Russia's shooting at itself. Could be. I think if Russia was shooting at it, they would hit it. Ukrainian artillery fires has cut the lines at the plant. Ukrainian artillery fire. So they don't want to look like that's the problem with a nuclear plant is you don't even need to shoot near the plant. You can shoot the power lines 50 miles away. And that will cause a meltdown. Fire had broken out and the power necessary for the safe functioning of reactors has been cut off. And no radioactive discharges has been detected. Whenever you have an earthquake within 100 miles of a nuclear power plant, they'll release a story in the major medias saying there was no increase of radiation at the nuclear power plant. The fact that they do stuff like that is the reason why they shouldn't exist. Because they have like 100, 120 sirens within 10 miles of a nuclear power plant. So the reactor scrammed, that's right. A decision has been taken to disconnect one reactor from the network because of damage to a 330 kilowatt high voltage power distribution line. There's only two of them, right? If you lose the other one, they effectively lost power to the plant and to the generators they need to start. Ukrainian troops attack the nuclear power plant that was captured by the stupid Russians for the second time in a day. And they showed the sparks from the voltage regulators, I would imagine. 2 power lines necessary for the operation of the power units were cut off. And of course, we've talked about this many times in the last month or so, how this will go down. Eventually, they'll blow something up, it'll take out the power lines, or they'll just take out the power lines. Or they have a catastrophic fire, it ends up burning the power lines. The reactors don't have external power, they can't start up their generators. They will melt down, and about 50 minutes later, they start melting. Once they get to 5%, there's no turning back. And of course, here in Canada, they says, oh, we're ready for a nuclear meltdown. You're ready to what? Run away? You can't run at the nuclear meltdown. This is from BBC, which Jimmy Savile had raped around 14 children in the basement. And we know for sure the BBC executives were hanging out in the basement. Otherwise, Jimmy Savile wouldn't have been there, would he? Russia's rockets damaged part of the nuclear plant. So BBC, which is the propaganda arm for the British government, comes out and says Russia's rockets done it. Of course, that's not actually what happened. Reuters, France tweets rules to keep nuclear power plants running during a heat wave, which started last month. They started extending that. Today they announced they're going to extend it all the way up until September. In other words, they're going to kill all the creatures in these huge rivers, the Seine and I can't remember what the other one is. So they show you this picture of the plant, one of the plants. But if you actually look up, the plant is surrounded by farms. France's nuclear power regulators extended temporary waivers allowing 5 power stations to continue discharging. We're talking about 1 million gallons a minute, 4,500 tons from each reactor. There's multiple reactors at each of the sites, and there's 5 different sites. This is a huge volume of water that was boiled to power millions of homes, right? This is very hot water we're talking about. And the water that's going in is super hot. They're in a drought. They don't have any glaciers left because of Fukushima. Has extended the temporary waivers. High river temperatures in recent weeks threaten to reduce France's already low nuclear output at a time when not nearly half its reactors are offline. Over half its reactors are offline because of corrosion. Because the government built it, of course, right? So it is going to be broken. The ASN watchdog said on Monday it has approved a government request for the waivers introduced in mid-July to be prolonged at the Buggy and St. Albans, Tricast, and blah, 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 blah. Power plants. The government considers it a public necessity to kill all the species in the rivers until September, almost the middle of September. Air temperatures are expected to climb in the mid to high 30 degrees Celsius this week on top of that, sustained, which means you're going to have to take a whole bunch of more reactors offline. On some of the hottest days, France has imported nearly 8 to 10 gigawatts, which is 8 reactors worth of nuclear energy had to be imported into France from countries that don't have it to spare, like UK and Germany, right? UN degenerate chief condemns suicidal shelling around the Ukrainian nuclear plant. Well, there's zero possibilities Russia's firing well, not zero, I can't say zero, I guess. We finally had a cool day today. So James was telling us that he was shocked because nobody responded. I've been thinking about that for the last number of minutes on and off. And there's another side maybe, because you got Fukushima, and I forgot to put N in there, which I got no excuses for. Fukushima extinction level event. I think that was on purpose when I done it that way. Because I think most people can figure it out on their own, right? Still not an excuse. But I kind of remember now when I think about it. It's just like Fukushima extinction level event. That, like when you see something like that, you can't unsee it. So they probably went home and Googled it or whatever search engine they were using. Hopefully they're not using Google, but hopefully they went to some search engine and looked it up. Because that's a subconscious thing, right? And it's too bad we don't have hundreds or thousands of people, I'm censored so heavily. They said one strike at captured nuclear power plant, which is the biggest in Europe, on Sunday was up to 60 feet away from the fuel storage area. So you think Russia's firing rockets from inside the plant at the fuel storage area? That's Ukraine is firing at the site, for sure. And this is from CNN, so this really won't have much credibility because it's CNN. Suggested that if one container was hit, to be a local accident. No. If you hit one of those things with the fuel in it, that will go into a chain reaction. And then you have a domino effect where the other cask, because this is burning at several thousand degrees, the other cask there could easily start melting down too. And these casks are kept cool by fans. They have huge fans that keeps these things will overheat if they lose electricity also, not just the fuel pool. So that's not a local accident on a territory, in nearby territory, like Norway and Switzerland. If it's 2 or 3 containers, the affected area will increase. Well, if you have a meltdown, you'll hit around 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. The other ones will melt down. They're placed right alongside of each other. They have very thin casts on top of that. The nuclear industry is insane. Sizewell C nuclear plant approval faces legal challenge. Sizewell C Together Against Sizewell C is an organization that is challenging them with lawsuits and everything else. First off, Sizewell C nuclear power plant, well, this is Sizewell A and B. The depiction you see at the bottom is the future Sizewell C, which is the same place as Sizewell A and B. And so for over 60 years, they've been hemorrhaging radiation into all those farms. Together Against Sizewell C, which is a great name, argue permission given by governments for power stations was granted unlawfully. This is a big media running this story, by the way, which is extraordinary, really. Campaigners began a legal challenge against the government decision to... And Sizewell C doesn't have water. They're in a water emergency right now where Sizewell B is to give the Sizewell C nuclear power station the go-ahead. Citing the threat to water supplies in an area officially designated as seriously water-stressed. It's pushing ahead with government plans to approve 1 new reactor a year. First off, France has to build the reactors. The UK can't build any reactors. France can't even finish the reactors they're trying to build. They're way over budget. They're almost a decade behind schedule in the reactors they're already trying to build. They have over half their fleet down with serious corrosion problems, and that they don't have, might have 25% of the employees they need, the skilled employees. And because Canada and America and many other countries have stopped building reactors a long time ago, that skill pool is falling apart in disarray. So is the supply chain. It's a big job, right, for most of the reactors that are shut off in France. The rest will follow suit for sure. For most of the ones that are in France that are shut down, which is over half the fleet, each one of them is a several-year job to replace. It's like a 4-year job, actually. We're doing it here in Canada right now, right? At the Bruce Power. These are $13 billion a pop to replace those parts. It's the same parts they're doing in France. A failure to assess the environmental impact of the project and the suggestion the site would be clear of nuclear material by 2140 in 120 years' time was not upheld by evidence showing highly radioactive waste would have to be stored on the site until a much later date than that. And Doneray in the United Kingdom is about 315 years. They say they have most of that place cleaned up. But who's going to be around in 315 years to find out if that's true or not? And why is it going to take 315 years? 3 centuries to clean up a single site. Which means it's hemorrhaging into the environment because it's still splitting the atom. That's the only stuff that they could possibly be talking about. And that all of these sites are surrounded by farms. Even to consider building a 20 billion plus nuclear power plant without first securing a water supply is a measure of the fixation this government has for nuclear power. And its panic in making progress towards a policy which is unachievable, as it is inappropriate for the 21st century challenges we face. Right, and so they should be concentrating on tidal energy and geothermal energy. And if they actually put any kind of effort into it, they can drill straight down under all existing coal, gas, oil, and nuclear power sites and tap directly into geothermal. Just gut out the fuel-intensive material and replace the whole infrastructure and leave the rest of the infrastructure there and just hook it up to geothermal. And you can use storage energy like battery ponds where you create 2 dams. You fill up the dams, and when you need water, it runs down to the first pond. And when you got excess energy, you pump it up to the second pond. You can also have compressed air storage. Yeah, hi, Angel's Place. I know you don't hang around for the typical comments, so let's do a shout out. It looks like the site will be almost entirely cut off by flood water at least once a year, because of climate change caused by the nuclear industry, decades of releasing emissions into the environment that pulses energy every second for billions of years. Gas, oil, and coal emissions don't have those attributes, right? The government said in granting the permissions for Sizewell C that a very substantial urgent need to build a plant outweighed the environmental harm. For who is this government person? Why don't they never name these people? This is, I had to kill the whole family to save the family car. Talk is what they're doing there. Corporations join the nuclear fusion craze. Corporations join the nuclear... Well, speculation was they're joining the craze in order to get their hands on the documentation, right? To get the statistics, to get the metrics. And as you're talking about Google and Chevron, and they write that money off on taxes too, right? So 167 million degrees Fahrenheit temperatures. And so a recent experiment said they got more energy than they put into it. And that one was 150 million degrees Fahrenheit temperatures. And so they claimed they had enough energy, extra energy. Now, first off, how many jugs of water can you boil with 150 million degree Fahrenheit temperatures? Okay, so you make your estimate, you make your estimate, you make your estimate, you make your estimate, you make your estimates. And so they said they produced enough extra energy to boil another 60 jugs of water, which is typically 2 liters, right? So how can, first off, you got to figure out how many jugs of water 150 million degree Fahrenheit temperature is going to boil and create. And then you have to factor in how you can identify that it boiled an extra 60 jugs of water. Well, I'm pretty sure that nobody's ever boiled water at 150 million degree Fahrenheit temperatures on planet Earth. But that was their evidence that a fusion breakthrough was that they created more energy, enough energy they were able to boil an extra 60 jugs of water. The industry and the media lies for them, of course. Google and Chevron are unlikely to be investing purely for financial returns. They want exposure to the cutting-edge research and early dibs if it eventually works. If they put this energy into renewables, we would have all of our issues solved immediately. We wouldn't need fusion or fission or gas, coal, oil, etc., right? And all the universities will do that, but they won't put any effort into the renewables or storage for the renewables. And if you do, they'll only look at batteries, which is the most pointless, stupid thing you could ever possibly do. Because that's so far away, and there's so many other things that are more easily to accomplish. So compressed air storage, where you dig mine shafts. Hello? Yeah. I am on live. Did you want to go on the screen or something? Sure. I don't know how to do that. No, I'm gonna. So I'm gonna put you up on the live. Is that what you want? You had a comment you wanted to make? Yes. Okay, hang on. You go ahead. You're live.
All right. Dana is a Canadian hero and an international hero.
Thank you. Anything else you want to put out there? I'm sorry.
No, that's cool. I don't want to take up other people's time.
No, that's good, man. I don't know if I'm a hero or not, but I'm trying to be a good person. Thank you, by the way, for calling in. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for receiving the call.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I will stay tuned.
Okay, good stuff.
Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah, good night. It's very awkward for people, I know. And I don't help, right, sometimes, because I don't know if they got something they want to throw out there, if they're nervous or what may be the case. But I don't see myself as a hero, obviously. I see myself as a educator, where we're trying to educate the population. Now, I've done research expeditions, very dangerous research expeditions for many, many years. And I can understand where people are coming from. And thank you. Russia threatens to blow up nuclear power plant in case of Ukrainian advances. Ukrainian advances. Of course, the pro-NATO media, because NATO is a very powerful, influential military-industrial complex. Russia did lay explosive mines at the nuclear power plant, but so would any other country, of course. They also done that at Chernobyl. This is what the military does. The Americans are doing it, the French are doing it, the Japanese are doing it. Here will be either Russia, land, or a desert, because they're trying to paint it as a Russia thing, right? But all the military-industrial complex, every one of NATO countries will do that. And every one of the United Nations countries, the military-industrial complex itself is United Nations. It's 195 militaries, right? The nuclear power plant will be either Russia or no one's. So that's the language you're going to get at war, for sure, right? And if they do blow it up, then how are they going to build nuclear power plants around the world, see? So they're going to sabotage their expansion of their scum nuclear power plants worldwide if they do something like that. We do not hide this from the enemy, because everybody's an enemy. NATO has 30 enemies for them. The enemy knows that the plant will be either Russia or no one's. We are ready for the consequences. See, this sounds like NATO's narrative, obviously. NATO needs to win over your UN Secretary General, nuclear war will destroy the planet. Now, they promote nuclear. They have many organizations, UNSCLEAR, ERPA, the IAEA, just to name a few, and all the rest of them do promote nuclear, right, including the UN. This is the moment to ask the nuclear-armed countries to commit to the principle of first use and to commit to the not use and not threaten the non-nuclear countries. Which, first off, like, this whole system is full of goblins. There's nothing functional. We have nothing functional. None of our universities are functional in any of the major countries, for sure. And as we covered many times over many, many years. Any attack on the Europe's largest nuclear power plant is suicide for all the species. The billions that are being used in this arms race should be used to fight climate change, says United Nations scumbags. Fight poverty and meet the needs of the international community. I don't know if I've actually ever heard the United Nations say that before. They're generally anti-human, anti-species. Egypt is pouring cement for their Russian nuclear power plant. Russia is going to build a nuclear power plant. They're going to fund a nuclear power plant. They're going to man the nuclear power plant. They're going to provide the fuel for the nuclear power plant. They're going to take a decade to train Egyptians to run the nuclear power plant. Otherwise, the power plant doesn't exist. And they're doing that allegedly in multiple countries, but where they have a memorandum of understanding, but we don't see them exercising it. We see a lot of posturing, right? Same as we see with the small modular reactors. They don't exist, but they're build them in factories, move them on trucks, and they're too cheap to meter, and blah, 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 blah. And they don't even exist. But they're to tell you that they have all these attributes, but they don't even exist. Anything to scuttle the future of the planet and the species, and particularly the renewable industries. Because, like, renewables has to be, first off, not wind and solar, but geothermal and tidal energies. And then back that up with wind and solar, and back that up with compressed air storage and pumped hydro, like pool water ponds. Not where you use the same water over and over and over and over in two different dams, right? It's just storage. And if there's mineral risks, if you have a lot of mineral in this water, it's very heavy water, so you need less, much more effective. So the New Mexico WIP, Waste Isolation Pilot Project, it was supposed to be just it's now called Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, but it was built as a pilot project originally. And the story has been changing many times over the last couple of decades. New Mexico's nuclear waste site could be open forever, despite the 2024 closure date, advocates warn. Yeah, I suppose it closed in 2 years' time, but they're actually expanding the air ducts for these facilities, which means they're going to extend it, obviously. Approval for plans to increase waste storage. This is not supposed to be a permanent repository, because there's a huge problem that when you put the stuff underground and seal it off, that means you can't go back. You can't retract that. And so it will melt down at some point, right? It's going to breach its containment at some point, and it's going to melt down. And it's already happened at WIP before that in 2014 on Valentine's Day. And I actually done a 1 hour presentation on it with the documentation that showed up, including footage of massive hemorrhaging. And that's before they acknowledged there was radiation releases. That was when they claimed it was a truck fire. And eventually the story came out it wasn't really a truck fire, it was a truck tire caught fire. And that they abandoned 55 football field-sized caverns because of a truck tire had caught fire from one of their salt trucks. And they're not really trucks, right? They're pint-sized trucks. But they abandoned the site for 10 days, and there was no radiation release, they said. It was just a truck fire. Well, you don't abandon the site because of a truck fire. If you're on one end of a football field and a truck catches fire and blows up on the other end of the football field, you're not going to take off running, screaming in terror and abandon the site for 10 days, right? A site stores waste like clothing, rags, soil, and tools. Well, they done $6 billion cleanup there, not because of clothing and rags and soils and tools, because they were putting in high-level waste from Los Alamos and the Idaho National Laboratories, and from Hanford too, right? These are legacy waste of plutonium. WIP leaders, which is a joke to call them leaders, are seeking renewal of a 10-year permit that allows the site to continue receiving shipments, plus the state's approval of the expansion of the plant to store more waste. And they changed the definition of waste containers 2 years ago, where they said that the containers are not filled all the way up, and so therefore the top part of the volume shouldn't be counted as waste. And that way they can put a lot more waste down in the hole in the ground, right? Which is a pathetic solution. But you got to do is you got to get it out of the environment first off, right? Because it's still splitting the atom. They're claiming that it's just contaminated objects, but it's 100% not true, right? So far this year, the New Mexico Waste Isolation Pilot Project has received 190 shipments and from 10 different sites across the country, shipped in large drums and semi-trailers along state roads and interstate. So, and all of this is vented into the environment, by the way. Let me see if I can find anything. Yeah. It's not, I must have screwed up. Whip smoke, whip junk, whip lick the iPhones, which was pretty disturbing, right? The truck fire, salt truck, I was looking for venting. That's the truck that caught fire. They had to abandon the site for 10 days.
A fire has shut down the WIP site in Carlsbad. Officials say a truck hauling salt caught fire about 11 this morning in an area underground. All employees were quickly evacuated, but several were taken to the hospital for potential smoke inhalation. WIP officials say their emergency plan was put into place immediately.
Yeah, they abandoned the site for 10 days. Oh, well, I'm not going to find it by the looks of it. It usually shows up whenever I put in WIP, eh? Well, let's go listen to the crazies here for a bit of fun. Now, Miss Williams on the end there, she's got people. There's a public meeting, and they're talking about the radiation released from the nuclear hole in the ground. She's going to compare it to licking her iPhone charger. Try making this up on your own.
To the highest causes of death in industry and to the general public. I would never work on 13.8 kVs. But I charge my iPhone every single night. I charge my iPad every single night. I touch that cord, I move that cord, I don't feel a tingle, I don't feel a shock. And if I licked that cord, it wouldn't hurt me. There are levels of radiation that will kill you.
So she said she licks her iPhone charger and it doesn't hurt her. So therefore, whip's safe. And I really don't have anything I can compare that kind of stupid to. That's basically, if she walked in somebody's house and they were deep frying French fries, she probably would pick the basket up and says, look, this can't hurt you. And she would stick her hand down in it and she would just say, see, it doesn't hurt. She'd take it out and her hand be melting. See, that didn't hurt. So stop being a baby about your French fries. The site has received 13,000 shipments. So they had something melted down there and they lost a bunch of sections. And it wasn't hammers or contaminated gloves. The only thing that can melt down. By the way, all these casts are vented. Hang on, I gotta try that one more time because I don't know. Oh, I got it. Yeah, I got it. Let's play this. Oh, it's no longer because my system's updated. Is no longer. That's too bad. But I played not that long ago. Bastards. Plus the fallout from the truck fire, and then the radioactive release was 2 or 10 days later. They abandoned the site for 10 days after the truck fire, which was obviously a nuclear meltdown, right? They call these sections panels. Each one is the size of a football field, which is 300 by 100 feet. They abandoned all of them for 10 days because they had a truck fire way over there in the corner. That's the problem with this story is you can't rush anything, right? So they had a truck fire over around right here. It was just the front tire got fire. And each one of these are the 300 feet by 100 feet. They abandoned everything because they had a truck fire over here. They're not dishonest. They're bald-faced liars, right? WIP was meant to be the site that would permanently dispose of waste only until the new repositories would be open across the country. No, WIP was an experimental project. It was called the Waste Isolation Pilot Project. And then it was changed to Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, which it currently is. Nuclear weapons must be wiped off the face of the earth. Makes no sense. They can't deliver safety, protection, or security. Well, they deliver a lot of security to the people that work there. They work there their whole life. Their children can grow up, get educated, and go work there when they leave. So last week I proudly stood with Japan's Prime Minister. The guy who just imported food into the United Kingdom and poisoned everybody at the supermarkets. 77 years ago, nuclear weapons were dropped on the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We done a presentation on it last night. Tens of thousands of women, children were atomized and aerosol and ionized and radiated and floated around the planet, were inhaled by birds and animals and insects and humans, and they got sick and died. Leaders must stop knocking on doomsday door. Knock, knock, knocking on doomsday's door. Yeah, knock, knock, knocking on doomsday door. Nagasaki survivor hopes to be the last victim of nuclear weapons. Yeah, me too, bless your heart. Nuclear power's biggest problem could have a small solution. Now, we talked about this. Fusion, the joke about fusion is it's at least 50 years away. But the last couple of stories we covered on it, one said the joke about nuclear fusion was it's always 20 years away. And the last one was Thursday we covered on this subject. Said it was 30 years away. But for many years, every time we read a story on this, they say it's 50 years away. Now they moved the goalpost on us. Most fusion experiments take place in giant donut-shaped reactors. They're not reactors because they don't work. Physicists want to test a smaller peanut-like one instead. Well, good for you. Go right ahead. You don't need to tell us about it. You don't need our permission. Oh, it's Stephen Cowley, right, from Princeton. Should have known. I forgot it was him. A nuke crank, right? They're like Wade Allison, Rod Adams. They're just Geraldine Thomas, Kathleen Higley's. These are notorious nuke cranks. They'll say whatever they're paid to say. They have the media at their fingertips. If you're wondering how fusion works, and I'm not because it doesn't exist, it's the same process as the sun. Well, the sun is 1,000 times bigger than Earth, and it's unhinged. It can expel the stuff it doesn't need billions of kilometers into space. Our laboratories can't do that. That's the only reason fusion works. So these are just, they're trying to raise money so they can have a cushy little job with no results. They don't have to prove anything. They just have to say, well, it's fusion. Who knows? It's 50 years away. Give us all the money you got because my kid needs an education to take over this job. We see this in the last week or so. Every 3 or 4 months, Australia shows up. Is nuclear power the best bet for Australia? You mean country that has enormous space for solar, wind, and anything else? It's the perfect environment for geothermal. It's the perfect place for tidal energy. It's got loads of deserts for solar. Not only that, it's illegal to have nuclear power in Australia since 1999, right? Which was Johnson's administration. It looks like nuclear energy is back on the table in Australia. Well, it's not. First off, who's going to build it? Because Australia is not going to build it. France ain't going to be doing it. Russia's not doing it. China's definitely not doing it. It's all about just getting money, right? Nuclear technology ban has been in place in Australia since '98. I stand corrected, which prevents the building of degenerate nuclear reactors in nuclear wasteland. The Liberal parties, Australia comes centre-right party, currently in opposition. They had 9 years in power and they didn't change the law. So why are they screeching for nuclear now when they're not in power? A viable way to reduce carbon emissions. Nuclear is the most carbon-intensive thing on the planet. By the way, carbon is good, but nuclear is not, unfortunately. Without carbon, the planet would be barren. There'd be no trees, no plants, no animals, no insects. No 8 million species. Nuclear power was seen as a political poison. It still is. Nothing's changed in 20 years. There's no nuclear renaissance. And it's likely that the Australian people will be much more receptive. First off, when you had that Royal Commission in 2016 in Australia, well, first off, Australia has the highest cancer rates per 100,000 worldwide. And that has a lot to do with the fact that Australia was the victim of the United Kingdom, who went to Montebello, Maralinga, many other places, waited for the wind to blow across Australia and set off nuclear weapons. Over and over and over. They also, United Kingdom set off over 700 dirty bombs in Australia, where they took uranium and plutonium, wrapped it in conventional explosives 700 plus times, and detonated it. Our anti-pro-nuclear campaign also has a vast amount of relatable, concrete evidence at its disposal. Oh, that's right. Australia is the worst for propaganda. It's actually funny. They're so pathetic. Politicians can be filmed touring nuclear plants in other countries. Wow, that's overwhelming evidence right there. Even nuclear waste depots, without having face mask on. The evidence now is just stunning evidence. You're so smart. I'm surprised your mother can count. They can interview lifelong nuclear industry workers who have lived to old ages. Really? That's your evidence? And they can compare the electricity rates in France to the rest of Europe. Really? Is this the same France with half the reactors shut down because of corrosion? Is this the same France that are paying the highest amount of money for kilowatt hours? They show us the backside of Reactor 3. That building is supposed to be 190 feet tall. These are insane people, aren't they? They're saying the journalists are at Fukushima, therefore it's all safe. That's not Reactor 2 in the background, that's Reactor 3. By the way, that's Reactor 3 too. The fuel pools were at the top of the buildings with decades of reactor cores. That's gone. And the reactor core was a mixed oxide facility. It's basically responsible for killing the Pacific Ocean. But that's what you're going to use as your evidence. A more modern form of nuclear generator called small modular reactors have been making a name for themselves. Australia's a hard case. There is no small modular reactors. It's going to take them 10 years, at least 2035 maybe, to get the first one up and running. Then they got to get the kinks out of it. Then they got to re-engineer it. Then they got to build it. Then they got to make sure that that works. Then they can try mass producing it. 20, 25 years down the road, basically, if they work really hard. And by 2026, the International Energy Agency said between 2020 and 2026, there'll be 4,800 gigawatts of new renewable energy online, which is equal to all current gas, oil, coal power plants and nuclear plants combined in renewables. It's actually equal to 5,500 nuclear full-size nuclear power plants coming online in a 6-year period. So why would you look at, in renewables, so why would you look at nuclear or anything else when that is actually taking place as we speak? So by 2026, there'll be the animosity equivalent of 5,500 full-size nuclear power plants and renewable energies online. Third question is what to do with our nuclear waste. This gets unnecessary airtime because the answer is simply stored. First off, it's hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. It's still splitting the atom. It's the most catastrophic thing imaginable. Without no meltdowns whatsoever, eventually that will kill all the species and humans on the planet. You're saturating the environment with atoms that will be around long after the human experience or the animal experience or the biota's experience. Australia is the best place in the world for storing it. And I believe we should be offering to store everybody's nuclear waste. Whoever wrote this is a very, very, very dangerous person. It's highly unlikely it's the author with their name on the story. It's usually written by the nuclear cranks, and then the media will publish it with their own journalist names attached to it. These are very difficult stories. You can't flush this out on your own. Now, Peter Castle is a mechanical engineer in the oil gas energy. There's zero possibilities he's able to work all this out on his own. It's zero. It's written by a lobby and then signed off by the media. A mesmerizing video, the biggest nuclear icebreaker in extreme weather. Russia's the only country with nuclear icebreakers. Also, Russia's dumped, like the icebreaker Lenin, it dumped that reactor core in the Arctic along with 18,000 other nuclear dumps in the Arctic. In the pristine Arctic, that's no longer pristine. Is the sole owner and processor of nuclear power icebreaker fleet worldwide, because they're the only ones stupid enough to do something like that. They already polluted the Arctic. TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, moved forward plans for small modular reactors that don't even exist. So rather than get the kinks out of the solar and renewable and geothermal and water batteries and compressed air storage, which are very functional, rather than make them better or make them perfect, they're going to try to come up with technology that doesn't exist. That is a million times harder to do than the new renewables. The only thing stopping renewables from taking over is storage. And you have water batteries where you just dam off 2 areas, fill it up with water, and then use one for creating energy, the other one for pumping it back up the hill with extra energy. That's your storage. That's the only thing you need for your base load electricity. But you can use compressed air storage. You dig mine shafts and you just compress air down there to about 120 psi. And the energy, because you create a lot of heat by doing that from compression, you can store the heat and salt for 2 to 3 weeks. So now, if you want, when you want to unpack that compressed air, you have all kinds of heat to make it expand even quicker. With plans to pursue the next generation of nuclear power. But of course, the Tennessee Valley's authorities' history on nuclear is abysmal at best. Thinks the small modular reactors will be needed to help them achieve their carbon-free. Again, that's a very dangerous word because without carbon, no species exists. Your biggest threat is radioactive fallout to every species. There's nothing with replicating cells has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. Allocating up to $200 million to explore and develop the Hitachi BWXT 300 reactor design that doesn't exist. It barely exists on paper. So they're basically saying we're not coming up with any solution unless it's nuclear. Well, what's the point of existing then? All you're going to do is hold your country hostage. Small modular reactors is a source of carbon-free generation. It's ludicrous because nuclear is the most carbon-intensive thing in human history. And small modular reactors don't even exist. And first off, it's going to create 35% more intermediate level fuel or waste, which is very, very dangerous waste. It's going to create 30 times more high level waste. And it's going to create 5 times more fuel rods because it's very ineffective. This is why we're using big ones in the first place, because the small ones are very ineffective. But you see this connotations of decarbonization. Most of the 17 reactors first proposed to be built more than half a century ago were ultimately scrapped due to cost overruns and problems. So their legacy of reactors is just probably one of the worst in the industry. It's the nation's third largest nuclear power operation with 7 reactors in Psycholia, Watts Bar. Well, one of the Watts Bar reactors took 42 years to bring it online, which was was actually the last reactor to come online was Watts Bar. It took 42 years. So the reactors are already brittle. 10 other reactors TVA proposed were never completed, even though TVA spent $10 billion of the stockholders' money on abandoned plants. It's quite frustrating to watch TVA chase their tail around after unproven technology without known costs like the small modular reactors that don't exist. Because as soon as you hear the word they're going to invest in small modular reactors that don't exist, in other words, we're not going to have anything to do with renewables. That's what they're saying, right? Well, they are slow to adopt proven and cost-effective technologies like solar power. These are not slow to adopt, and they are slow rather to adopt the proven and cost-effective technologies. Rather, my apologies. I get frustrated with this industry sometimes. The Philippines, stupid Philippines, to look into small modular nuclear power plants that don't exist. So, well, good for them. But that don't mean they're going to be stupid enough to bite on the hook. I put up the video today. It was up 57 minutes. Didn't get a single thumbs up on the poll or the video. It's really unusual, right? That's all. The Philippines are looking to reactors that don't exist. Hopefully, President Marcos will be able to meet with NuScale. NuScale, which is an American company that don't have a reactor. They're selling reactors that don't exist is what they're doing, right? Which is how we got into this in the first place, by the way. That was the original scam that started the nuclear industry. They were selling reactors that didn't even exist. Chinese nuclear bombers fly drills near Taiwan to prepare for the real operation. Well, you can't quantify those assertions that they're doing that to prepare for a real operation. They've been flying reactors over Taiwan since ever, because Taiwan is part of China. In case you don't know. Nuclear is so carbon free. If it was carbon free, if it didn't have any harm, like carbon's not harmful to the environment. You can't exist without carbon. Plants, insects, birds, animals, bacteria, fungus, trees, nothing can exist without carbon. France says Japan has lost control. The French should leave the country. So if your nuclear power plant breaks down, you should leave your country. Does that make you a pro-nuclear? If your power plant breaks down, resulting destruction will take half the planet with it. It does that through what's known as radioactive fallout, aka global warming. It's invisible plumes that covers the planet, pulsing energy every second for millions of years. This model is 20 days of Fukushima fallout. Gas, oil, and coal emissions don't make plumes like that, by the way. Swiss embassy evacuates Tokyo fearing radiation, which is 220 miles away. Or kilometers, I think, actually. Radiation around Fukushima where humans vomit uncontrollably and hair can be stripped from the bodies. That's probably why 3,000 people died shortly after. Of course, the industry was trying to blame it on stress, but we've seen earthquakes and typhoons and cyclones where they evacuated millions and millions of people and people didn't die like they did after Fukushima. They talk about the Fukushima 50, but the Fukushima 50 doesn't talk about the fact that they weren't even at the site because the helicopters couldn't even go there. Now, when I talk about there, I'm talking about Fukushima. The food was banned by 55 countries in 14 prefectures, not just Fukushima. Do you get what's happening? Do you get any idea how much trouble you're in? You're in a lot of trouble if you're in Europe, Canada, United Kingdom, and many other countries. Canada removed all restrictions after 93 days. 55 countries banned it from 14 prefectures. So Japan had nowhere to ship it, only Canada. That's why everybody in Canada is currently sick now, because we were poisoned by Japanese food. Because the nuclear industries captured Canada a long time ago, and they have shortchanged everybody's lifespan. Korea calls Japan's handling of Fukushima incompetent, which is actually being pretty polite. The EU Energy Commissioner called Fukushima an apocalypse, which is appropriate. Tokyo has lost all control of events at Fukushima. They wouldn't let outside help go in either. Top Hong Kong newspaper, Fukushima is a global threat. As a global response is urgently needed. This model is the brutal plutonium-239 dispersal model, which is based on data from TEPCO, which is not a decommission authority, by the way. The slower you spread radiation dose, the more effectively it produces cancers and inherited defects. There's 1,800 illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. It's not just cancer. Cancer is typically the latent one, by the way. This is unusual. We actually got more votes likes than we do in the poll. It's completely confusing because it's usually at least 1/3 more in the votes than it is for likes. I'm not complaining, I'm just saying. Should the nuclear industries hire smart people and fire the millions of stupid scumbags in the nuclear industry? It's not going to fix the nuclear industry, but at least the nuclear industry won't be worse. Because that's what you obviously should be doing. And looks like we got a spammer showed up. We got 10% said no, which is extraordinary for these polls. Because our polls are based on facts, not conjectures. Japan is going the very best way in the world for destroying the human race. Former official in Fukushima, this is a disaster of all of humanity, the entire world. It's bigger than anything that the scumbags can cope with. The ambassador warned that this could one day be considered the start of the ultimate catastrophe of the world and the entire planet, which are the same, hopefully. I'll show you how that works, actually, because that's important. So Fukushima melted down, multiple reactors melted down. This model was 16 days of radioactive fallout. Just 16 days. It's based on an incomplete emissions, like the meltdowns and the fuel pools. It's actually only based on venting. This is from France, and it shows the entire planet covered in an invisible plume of radioactive fallout. It's considered the worst case scenario, and it's 100% accurate, unfortunately. They found plutonium in every sample. It's everywhere. Deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world. Do you know how it does that? It does that by radioactive fallout. This is a neptunium-239 dispersion, which decays to plutonium-239. And this is TEPCO's model. So this is pulsing energy every second for millions of years, almost at the speed of light. So gas, oil, and coal emissions don't have those attributes, right? Nuclear engineer, I agree Fukushima can be an extinction event. I agree that Fukushima can be an extinction event. Nuclear engineer. You know why they say that? They're saying that because of the radioactive fallout, right? So we launched research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska, and we being me, and I've done this year after year after year by myself. And what I'd done was I spent 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean. The Arals are all the way to Alaska. I repeated this year after year. So year after year, I've done the research expeditions, and what I discovered is that Fukushima was an extinction level event. All the species to your right are permanently exterminated. This is permanent. The species never came back. We went there year after year. The species never returned. And I'd done this for 4 to 5 months a year without coming home. What I discovered was the radioactive fallout from Japan has wiped out the Pacific Ocean. So these are the most vulnerable species in the tidal zones. I went to the same, these are authentic before and after pictures. So I went there and took the pictures to the right, and each year went back and forth each year. This is due to the radioactive fallout from Japan. You can see the whole Pacific Ocean is now covered. And this model is based on 16 days. That's also the Atlantic. So this is the Atlantic. This is Europe. Over there is the Pacific. So it wiped out all the species. Not almost wiped them out. Not close to wiping them out. But not only the species in the tidal zones, which is the nursery, it wiped out all the insects in the forest. Now, this is typically what it looked like when I was on the research expeditions. That's the typical day on the research expeditions. I've done this year after year after year after year, and the species didn't come back. The species didn't come back, period. And so what we've been seeing, we cover the journalists, and this is, they write propaganda all day long, and the idea is to make the population complacent. Yeah, we broke the chain. Now, tomorrow I'm supposed to get the CAT scan of my kidney because it's full of cancer. And we've been banging on the DCA for, I'm not sure how many weeks this is, 6 weeks or something, because it took almost 2 weeks for it to show up, right? But doing about 25 milligrams per kilogram. And then using vitamin B1, vitamin C, potassium, and zinc to mitigate toxicity and then to help it absorbed into the body. Also green tea, right? Or black tea, rather. And on July the 18th, hospital contacted me, wanted me to show up the next morning for the CAT scan. I asked them, could I do it in 3 weeks' time? And so they blacklisted me. So I don't have a time. The doctor's office told me that I had an appointment for tomorrow, but it didn't have a time on it. And so then the next day I got to go to the city to see the doctor if I actually get the CAT scan tomorrow. Because I called him Thursday, Friday, and today, and to find out what time my appointment was, and they won't return my call or answer the call. And I called them 3 times on Thursday, 2 times on Friday, 2 times today, and left a message with my phone number and each time. And so it looks like because they have this God syndrome in these hospitals, right? Because I didn't take the first available date, I wanted to wait the extra few weeks to give the DCA a chance to work to reduce the size of the tumor, right? And it'll be interesting tomorrow to see if I get the CAT scan. Because if I don't get the CAT scan, that means I got to contact the doctor and set up a CAT scan for in the city, because obviously you won't be able to do it local. It looks like they blacklisted me is what happened. Because they're so... I will be filing complaints about it. Why would I want to go to Japan, to a nuclear wasteland for, Sean? I don't need to go to Japan to do the research. It's ridiculous. Cough mixture, Don Vincent. I guess that's the show. That's the show for tonight. Got a tough day tomorrow. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a nasty day for me tomorrow. And then the next day, I got to be in the city first thing in the morning. But on the flip side, we still got to come out and kick the shit out of the nuclear industry each night, because we can't afford to give them a day off. If we give them a day off, they'll wreck the planet, as far as I can tell. And I'm pretty upset about not getting an appointment time, right, for the CAT scan to find out if the tumor has reduced significantly, because that's what it should. It should reduce by about 70% in the first 3 weeks, which theoretically means I shouldn't need surgery, right? They shouldn't have to take my kidney out, right? If I can prove that's so, then I can keep my kidney as far as I can tell, right? That's the plan. But the thing the doctor was worried about was the cancer had traveled down into my bowels. And because I was out on research when there were major plumes coming through, I could be full of cancer for all I know. And the nuclear industry hates my guts, as you can see by my Geiger counter screeching up there. I've been a pain in the nuclear industry for a very long time. Listen, I can't go to Japan. Japan hates my guts, and I hate Japan's guts. Japan is I'm not a scumbag like Arnie Gunnison where I pretend. I have provided the documentation. Yeah, I hear you, Dana. Thank you, James. Let me do a quick shout out for everybody. But I am worried because that's not normal, right? That I can't get. They didn't give an appointment time. After all this time, they still won't. They won't answer my call. They won't return my call. We're talking about the hospital, for God's sakes. Obsolete Optics, Peaceware, Nancy Sands, James Lucid, Thinker, Skawilla, Joe, Stand By Me. Good night, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow night. I'll be worn out, no doubt. Because I'm under a lot of stress now for the last 4 or 5 days, because I can't get a time, and I need to find out what's going on. Not a game, right? This is not a game, as you folks, wonderful folks, knows. Angel's Place. Stephen Young, he's been sick by the sounds of it. Hi, Stephen. Dale P. I remind people that I can't run this operation with no donations. We're not raising any money. We have so many things that got to get accomplished. We're almost at the end of summer down here. We got the boat running. I still didn't produce that video. I got it unloaded onto my computer though, but I got to remember to put it together tomorrow night. I could find a piece of it now, I think, if I tried. Let me see. Let me see. Shouldn't be that hard to find. Oh, there we go. Let's try these 2 videos. Who knows? Let's try a couple of videos here for a bit of fun before we call it a night. I'm going to do a better job tomorrow night. So that's the kicker.
Let me see what we got going on.
Yeah,
here.
that's the video.
We got choke.
Choke is on.
We got a gear shift broken off.
I broke the gear
Really?
shift. I forgot about
Shit.
that. Just needs one part
Son
to
of a
fix
gun,
that. I took that piece off
That's
a
neutral.
couple of days ago.
Reverse. That's forward.
The piece is not too
Crap, the
bad to
handle
get.
broken off.
I can probably get it made at a machine
gun,
shop, right?
It gets bounced around in rough weather, eh?
Come on, Dana, starter.
Broken right off.
Don't mind that. I'll fix that.
All the way forward.
Let's try it right there. Hang on.
That should be neutral. You see, it doesn't jump.
All right.
Oh, it's running.
So the little one started up. still got the choke in out.
Wow. That's good to hear.
Put the choke in, Dana.
But I always run it dry before I put it away for the winter.
Push the choke in, Dana.
Don't see any water coming out, but I guess there's probably not enough. Let's turn this off. Let's turn her off. The choke is still on.
Yeah, so I got the choke. There's the big engine now. Let's try the big engine. This is a couple of days ago. My power washer is broke, I took it apart, and it's cheap material. I can't fix it, which is too bad because I really, really need it. Come on, Dana. I'll fast forward here in a second.
Go try it. Just go internal. I already got it pumped up. I already got it pumped up. Actually, it barely needed one full squeeze. Barely needed a squeeze. The other battery is hooked up. Okay. 2 batteries. So if I pushing on the key, that's the choke, right? Let's go for it.
Yes,
baby. Yeah.
How good is that?
That's perfect. Okay, let's push. Let's turn it off. All right. Wow. Turning battery off again. We get double battery.
And all of my tanks are empty anyway, right? But that's a good sign. Both of those motors started up. I got to start up the other 2 on the little Zodiac later. We keep shouting out everybody here. We'll end the poll. Ryan Underwood, Peaceware, Cough Mixture, Andrew B, which is CFINSTR. We're almost down through the comment section. Onion Breath. Another Gmail. We had lots of comments tonight, didn't we? Invisible Rabbit. Was I wrong? No. Invisible Rabbit. Let me see. Richard McCann. So that story about the fuel place here in Canada being across the street from the school, it was the first major story we covered. That's a shocking story. That's a horrific story. Don Vincent, Thinker. We're almost down. Katja. Darlene. We had scores of people tonight. That's unusual. Comment section. This Sean O wants me to go to Japan into enemy territory. Chad. So let's end the poll here. Looks like we got spammed pretty good. 12% said no. Nuclear industry shouldn't hire smart people and get rid of the stupid people. Why wouldn't you want to get rid of the stupid people? How can you vote no on that? What's wrong with hiring smart people and get rid of stupid people? How could that be a bad idea? I don't get it. Let's end the poll. Yeah, don't eat mushrooms, man. For God's sakes, don't eat mushrooms. They aggregate radiation the most. Yeah, so that was a good poll tonight. If you made it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Hopefully I'll get CAT scan tomorrow. I have a feeling that's going to be a disaster because I'm the wrong person to be screwed over. I got a tendency to fight back, right? I got to wait till the doctor gets it before I start sending in complaints. I'm pretty upset they done that to me. And it's left me very worried. We got to get this accomplished, right? So we'll get it done, but we all good. Good night, everybody. See everybody tomorrow night. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you're up to that kind of stuff. Hugs for everybody. Thank you, folks. Have a great night. We'll see everybody in about 24 hours. Take care, folks. Thanks, Sean. Good night, everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Take care, folks.